So this is Rick Morgan, the comic book scientist. I'm here with Mark Oldroyd, who I believe is a comic book aficionado.
I am.
Yeah. Are you involved in professionally in comic books or just as a hobbyist?
Just as a hobbyist. My first career, my first job in industry was actually as a paper scientist. So
Mm.
I am quite interested in a bit behind the science of comics and comic aging and comic restoration.
Well, you and I are going to get along just fine, I suspect, in that case. Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
Yeah,
Like that, not outside of comic books. Who are you?
yeah. So I worked in industry, so paper industry first, on the technical side. I then moved into production management. I moved out of the paper industry and went to work for Mars, or the confectionery company, producing dog food.
Oh, wow. I haven't had that candy bar yet.
No, well, Mars actually makes Chum and Whiskers and a lot of other pet food brands. I was with them for quite a long time, and then I moved from there to a company that manufactured high-end cosmetics. So I was in the cosmetics and hand wash and shampoo business for about 10 to 15 years. And then I went to work for a book company, book selling company, selling books on the internet. And then about 2 years ago, I retired.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
it. If there's an opposite to dog food, I think cosmetics is it. I don't know if there's a way to this description.
Well, yes, I sort of, at parties, I sort of graduate. If you go to a party and somebody says, "What do you do?" and you say, "I make paper," the conversation ends. If you go in and you say, "I make dog food or cat food," people are quite interested because they've got dogs and cats. If you then go to a dinner party and you say, "I make cosmetics," the guys all switch off and start talking about football, and the women want to talk to you.
That's funny. That's funny. I have similar conversations. I have like if people don't know me, if my jobs are so I have so many jobs and so many of them are prompt for questions. I worked in the space industry for a long time, and I do like a lot of science stuff, and I work for the CDC, and I travel a lot. I do a lot of varied and interesting things. I often say, just because I don't really want to talk about myself for half an hour, I often will say, I make cardboard boxes because I figure it's the most boring thing they can possibly think of.
Everybody glazes over.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, that's stupid.
I start talking to the accountant.
Exactly. See, so tell us, give me some of your early comic book stories. A couple, one or two. You have a favorite book you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I think in the one I put up when I was on my bicycle, I talked about when I was in my mid-teens. I used to buy comics at a market stall in Yorkshire in north of England and sell them as one of the first specialist comic books in the UK in London.
What
So I used to buy them for a few.
What time frame are we looking at?
1975, 1974, 1975, something like that. And I think I mentioned in the video one of the. So I think I told the story about selling Amazing Spider-Man #1 for £5. But I did mention that I had a comic that from that time that I've still got, and the reason I've still got it is so beat up nobody would buy it from me. I don't care that it's really beat up because it reminds me of the time that I've got it here. So it's a British. I don't know if you know about the Alan Class. Okay, so this is an Alan Class reprint of the Spider-Man and Medusa cover here, and it's really beat. It's got a 4.
Is that ASMC?
Yes,
I forget the number of it.
Something like that. And it's got a 4 on the cover here, and that's this market stall owner who's written 4 on it, and that means I paid 4 pence for it.
Oh,
which is 4 cents.
This must have been just past the shilling and penny years or something.
It was, yeah, because it was 1971. So this is after 1970. Although this one was actually produced before 1971 because it's got the shilling mark on it. But when I bought it, it was probably in the early to mid 70s.
Yeah.
So yes, that's in my collection. It's only got value to me, not to anyone else. So yeah.
Wow, I really want to get that 4 off of there. want to take
I know you'd want to remove it. I want it to stay on because
okay.
it's part of the story.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah, but my fingers are itching. You know,
I know. I can
must
see you.
take
You were
that off.
looking at that thinking, I wonder how I can get that out.
Yeah.
All those tape marks down the side, I could see you. I know this is your type of comic, isn't it? You'd like to
Yeah.
get your.
I see those ugly babies, and those are for me. You know, I really do like them. One of the things I'm considering to do is I have so many boxes of comics that I've like intended to restore and fix that I haven't. I mean, I'm thinking about putting them in packages of like 10 or 20 each, and then selling them with notes of how to fix them, and then sending to people so they can practice on books. Like
Well,
this is
that's
a
good.
Silver Age pack. This is a Bronze Age pack. These all need pressing. These need spine tick removal. These need tape removal, with a little thing of instructions, and then like say here's 5 Silver Age books that I never got to, and I'll probably die before I do. Here, practice yourself, because I only get more. I don't run out of them, and then it's just like that's a neat book. Inside the book, why is it called Creepy, and why does it have that Spider-Man?
Well, let me tell you a bit about Alan Class comics, because they are part of my childhood. Because in the 50s and 60s, you couldn't import comics or magazines from America into the UK, so there were no Marvel comics in the UK in the 1960s. So there was a guy called Alan Class who got the rights to print a number of American comics, Archie Comics, Charlton Comics, American Comics Group, and also Marvel, but he didn't get DC. And so he began a number of titles which reprinted American comics. And I'm going to show you this. This is really neat. So here we've got an Avengers 58. Yeah,
nice. That's a pretty one.
The origin, the origin of Vision. Yeah,
yeah.
Well, that is Uncanny Tales reproducing.
That's not even that imaginative. They just took some titles from different comics.
Well, he got the photostats from Marvel for this, and the cover's in color, sort of, but the inside's black and white. Now, what's exciting about this is I've actually got the original printing plates for that cover.
Really? How exciting is that?
That's the red. That's the blue, because it's 4 color. That's the black.
Wow.
And that's the yellow.
Wow, that's really cool. I've only seen those a couple times in my life, seen actual printing plates. I think a lot of them were destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's still got them all. This guy, Alan Class, kept them all, and occasionally he sells them. And you get a little certificate of authority signed by Alan Class himself.
Wow. That's great. He has a really fancy signature too.
Yeah. So so I'm currently collecting these Alan Class comics. This is a really nice one. That's
wow.
The first Vision.
Wow.
And these are beginning to get a bit of value now. These Alan Class comics used to sell for nothing. I mean, they were just throwaway items. But these ones which reproduce the Marvel covers are now beginning to sell for. I've seen that there's one of them which reproduces Fantastic Four 1, and I've got that in a grade 2, and I paid a couple of £100 for it. But I've seen there's a 7.5 out there, which I think you could probably get a couple of $1,000s for. So these are beginning to gain some value. They're not, the print runs were really low. They were for kids, and they just got beat up and thrown away. So there are very few of them. And CGC and CBCS will grade them.
Oh, wow. Really? They look like a different form factor slightly.
Right. That's what's interesting here is they're wider. Okay. They're wider than the American comic. What you could claim that they're more original, because the artists at the time were working on wider boards than the comics, because they were working on golden age sized comic boards. So actually you get more of and he got the original art for these. So actually you get more of the cover on the Alan Class comic than you do on the original Marvel comic.
Oh, I see. I see. That is interesting. And that's a
Yeah.
beautiful cover. I forget who did that cover. It looks Stranko-ish, but I'm not sure who did that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't remember who it is either. It hasn't got a signature on front of it. But it's a great cover, isn't it?
Oh man, it
That's
is.
the first vision. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. I love it, and I love Behold the Vision too. It's really great.
Yeah, yeah.
That's terrific.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's one of the things I'm currently collecting.
So I like to
Um,
ask people these same questions. How has
yeah.
the industry changed since you started, and do you think it's a positive direction, negative direction, neutral direction? What would you say from 1975? If you went back to 1975, Mark, and talked to him, what would you tell him?
I'd tell him buy Spider-Man, not Batman. So I was a more DC than Marvel. So I've got virtually all of the Brave and the Bold.
Mm,
I've got about 6 issues I haven't got,
yeah.
and I've got quite a lot of Batman. But of course, I should have been like you and collected Spider-Man. I've got quite a lot of Spider-Man, but it's nowhere near as good as your collection, I
I would hate
suspect.
to start. I would hate to start today. I'll tell you that much. So
Oh,
it'd be a uphill climb. I have all of every Spider-Man, every title, but I have several that are like duplicate or triplicate. I'm probably 80% of the way to having two full runs of all of Amazing
wow.
Spider-Man. Yeah, but I can't help myself. I got problems when I get to comic book conventions. My wife always says, "Don't you have like 5 or 6 of that one?" I'm like, "Yeah, but this one's just a little different, in some special way." I have to convince her that I need. There's a couple of spectacular Spider-Man covers that are orange. I think it's like 71 and 95 that are. I love this orange colors, and they have like Black Cat and Cloak and Dagger. I just love these covers. So every time I see one, I buy them. I'm in danger of finishing a short box of just those covers. Just keep every time I see one, I'm like, I gotta have it. And my wife says, "You got problems." So,
Yeah. When do you store them all? Doesn't your wife get a bit upset with all your rooms being full of comics?
well, we happen to own a storage facility, so that's something that an addict doesn't need is more places to put comic books. So it's like if your own storage facility, you can just like make a library room out of the things. And so it becomes too much after a while. But how do you think about the industry? What do you think? Is it because I've been
Well,
working for years to just do preservation of the body of comic books. This is an effort to
yeah,
preserve the soul, right? I really want to do that.
yeah, and I think it's a great ambition. And as you know, as a paper scientist, if you go to my website, I've got a bit about comic preservation from a sort of paper scientist point of view. You know, and I was interested. I was going to ask you actually. I've bought your cleaning solution, which I haven't tried out yet, but I will
Yeah.
do shortly. Um, but one of the things I'm interested in, obviously the problem with comics is they're ephemera, and the Silver Age, Bronze Age, Golden Age comics were made with mechanical pulps. They've got lignin in, they've got acid in, and they're gradually destroying themselves.
Mm,
Now, one of the processes that I came up with was the US Library of Congress came up with a deacidification process using magnesium salts. Now, and I did buy some of but the spray is really expensive. If you buy this sort of deacidification spray, I think it cost me about £40 for about 300 mil, and I was wondering whether you would be looking at, and the trick is how do you dissolve the magnesium salts, because it doesn't dissolve in water, it doesn't dissolve in alcohol, so you've got to get special solvents to dissolve it in, and when you spray it on the comic, it's slightly alkaline and it deacidifies it.
yeah,
So
no carbonate salts. Very few carbonate salts are actually soluble anyway. So I'm not sure what goes into their solution. I've made some of my own that are slightly caustic.
oh,
And so from my trick, and this is not a happy trick, is that I use ammonium hydroxide instead.
okay,
So ammonium
all right,
hydroxide is reason I don't like the magnesium salts and the carbonate. So they're good. So the Library of Congress's preservation techniques are great for paper that's white. But their aerosol, in my experience, can leave a white film over the top of color. right?
Yes.
So if
Yes.
you
Yes.
see
It does
colors that
fly.
aren't black, it doesn't really matter too much. But if it's any kind of other color, it leaves kind of a very, it's hard to see, but it's an opaque film because it becomes a white. So what I think what they're doing primarily is it's a suspension. It's a colloid, they call it. So the little particles are suspended. They're not actually dissolved. They're just suspended. And
Oh,
they
okay.
spray it, and then they land, and then that provides some acid neutralization that's, a little more gentle. And then the solvent evaporates, and then you have the stuff. I've been using ammonium hydroxide a lot, and that works great. And then the products all evaporate, so there's no residue. The only problem is it stinks like hell. When you put it on, it burns your eyes, and it's like I have to do it in a fume hood. And what I do is I take like a bunch of Q-tips or chopsticks, and I arrange all the pages separately, right? And so that they're spread out on like you can imagine a couple of ring stands with a post, and then
Yeah.
I just jam a bunch of actually like chopsticks from the restaurant in there to like spread the pages out. And I'll put a tray of ammonium hydroxide underneath it, and it evaporates up through pages. And that way I don't have to sit there and do every one of them. And it's just, plus I want the gases anyway. I really don't want to spray liquids on my book because
No,
you do
no,
it
the
one
gassing
thing,
can be.
another, they do all kinds of stuff. So it's better in gas phase. And I put a big bag, like just a plastic bag over the whole thing. And then it has a fume hood. And so it takes the fumes out the back, so I don't have to suffer from it. But it helps. I don't really never know like how to check the pH of paper. You can do what they call near IR. If you do infrared spectroscopy, it's not in the regular like IR spectrum. It's just like far to the left of like 3000 in it. You can see like proton attachment to cellulose, but that's just really hard. So what I do is I actually take comic books that are of similar age, and then I literally take and put them in a blender and blend the paper pulp up, and then you take a page of that. And that's awful way to do it, but it works for me to see like the testing.
Yeah.
The other thing
Yeah.
I
Just
do
check
is
the process worked. Yeah.
yeah, and I pulp it. I'll make paper pulp again. I mean, because you want the right ratio of lignin to cellulose in there in like any kind of binding agents and sizing. So if I'm like repairing a book, I cut up with scissors old books, put it in the blender, blend to make a pulp, and I have like a
Yeah.
little roller, and you take that pulp with a little spatula, and you put it down, and you can roll it out, and it doesn't look perfect, but you can use it to mend interior pages because that paste will roll pretty
Okay.
flat pretty flat,
Yeah.
really. And then you can take a ruler and an X-Acto knife, and you can cut straight, and it will patch. If you get a triangle of paper that needs to be patched, more often it's a rip or a tear. And what I'll do is
Yeah.
I'll take a little, what's it called? A transfer pipette, those glass ones, and I kind of break the tip
Yeah.
off so it's a little wider, and you
Yeah.
cut that up, and you like
Yeah.
kind of dab it on there along the paper line, and then you can like make the paper grow back together, and you roll a roller on it, and it dried. Now it's not perfect. It's a little stiff right there where that edge is. And if you were to bend it a lot, it would probably break, but like optically, it's pretty remarkable. It looks just about the same. I've carefully avoided showing some things to people on YouTube because one is they couldn't really do it, right? I
No.
don't want to encourage people to do stuff that they just couldn't do. I don't want them to try it and come back and say, "Hey, my Fantastic Four #1 is ruined because you showed me how to do this." And the other thing is sometimes it's dangerous, right? Some of the things they do hurt me or like problems, with stuff. And so I'm like, okay, do I really want to get people? So, my goal all along has been to help people do this themselves. But is everybody going to have a laser? Is everybody going to have IR? So I do my stuff, and I'm kind of getting, to be fair and honest with you, I'm getting a little tired of cleaning comic books for a while. So I just want to like teach people to do it themselves. I figure by my count, last November, I had restored my 10,000th comic book. So
Wow.
I'm kind of getting burned out on it, but I want to make stuff so that you can do it. Right? I want to teach you to
Yeah.
do it so you can make all
Yeah.
the money and do your own books. I don't need any money. I want you to go do your thing and be happy and preserve these things. And that's my goal. Is I'm trying to make this thing be not really, it's to be marginally profitable, so it doesn't cost me money to do it for my time. But my goal isn't to make money; it's to help you do these things. And Mark, you are a paper scientist, brother. You and I should be going to business together. You should be doing this for me. I should be have a book sent to you from the UK, and you do it.
Yeah. Well, it's. I mean, I've got, I don't know, probably 3,000 or 4,000 comics, and I started pressing in January. But I press maybe 2 or 3 comics a day. Well, I'm only going to be pressing my comics for the rest of my life. It's not as if I can press anybody else's. It's and I do enjoy the sort of dry cleaning and pressing. I'm going to try your wet cleaning technique with your solution.
Yeah.
Um,
My son is
but
working for me doing it now. I'm going to show him using the kit from the beginning and mixing it up and doing it. I haven't done that either because I'm just lazy. But I'm going to show him how to make it up and like have him like instruct people how to do it because there's a lot of danger. Like you can do reds and yellows. It's going to come off a little. That's not always bad because the first layer of red and yellow is not as bright as the underlayers and they can look amazing. But if you do too much, then you're only talking 5 microns of ink. You do too much and it comes off the sizing, you're in trouble. I'll help you do it.
I'm going to test it out on these Alan Class comics. Most of them have a white back, a white back, which sort of is like pig pen in the comics. It sort of attracts dirt. This white this white back here. It's just got black and white on it, and that ink is quite robust. This one isn't that dirty actually, but this sort of cover attracts dirt like anything, and loads of them are really dirty.
Yeah.
But this ink is quite solid, and I'm going to try out your solution on some of these Alan Class comics, just on this sort of black area, and just to test it.
Yeah.
And see how I get on.
That's a good candidate. A lot of times it's dirtier, like where people's fingers were up on the upper top.
Yeah.
And then right along that spine. Another thing you can tell is the top middle, because people flip through comic book boxes. They get like right at the top center of the middle thing. They're just doing this all the time. I see that all the time. And a lot of people send me books and say, oh, this is like a 9.0 or something. And then I'll look at it and get the low light stuff. I'm like, no, dude, I'm sorry. It's not. It's like, it's a constant story, Mark, I have to go soon.
Okay.
I think we are, because I'm enjoying this conversation so much, I think there might be another one in our future if you're willing.
Yes, I'd love to. Yeah,
exactly. Pull out some more books, brother. I want to hear some more stories. And I think, maybe we can do a little, when you get your solution and you want to start doing it, maybe we do like a little training online or something.
Let's do that. I'll do that. I've got some distilled water that should be, I haven't got any distilled, so I had to get some distilled water. So that should be arriving the next day. So maybe next week sometime we can, you can give me a little tutorial.
That'd be perfect. I would love to do that. One thing I should tell you is here's why you use the distilled water. There's a chelating agent in there that holds metal out just in case you have some boxing that's the iron base. And if you use tap water, a lot of times it will make that part not work. So
water is very hard. So,
it could. The other thing is it could, if you use distilled water, especially if you have magnesium or calcium salts in it, can leave a white residue on the book that you have to go back over with regular water and kick off again. The last thing is that it's not really that you need distilled water for it, is a lot of paper has paper fines just from being, bent and stuff, little pieces of paper everywhere. And the solution will make those fines come out. They like float on the surface. And then when you're cleaning, it makes what looks like a streak. It's just the residue of those little fines around. Yeah, exactly. So you have to be careful. And then you might have to wipe those off with water because you can kind of blow them too, but it's just easier to do with water, and they come off. So anyway, I have another meeting coming up here. So because I'm actually in the US and it's 6:30 in the morning here.
I know. You usually get up at 5:30 in the morning I'm
often up at 4 actually. I have long days. But my friend, it was a pure, unadulterated pleasure to meet you. And I'll post this video and we'll keep in touch.
And you, Rick.
All right.
Cheers.
Take care. Cheers.
Bye.